Hi everyone, Bob Dietrich here with the ADHD Toolbox, another awesome edition. And today we got something special, something different that you may not have heard about before, and that is ADHD coaching. And of course, you've heard about ADHD coaching. Many of you have. When I first started digging into ADHD, I didn't know anything about coaching, and I didn't even know it was a thing. And it certainly is. And it's not only a thing, but it's a game changer for many families that use it. And so today we're going to talk about why it's a game changer, why it's so important. How do you find the right coach when it's time for you to use it? Because, do you use a coach when you have a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, or do you only use it when you're a teenager or adult? We're going to talk about that today so you understand how that works. So today we have David Giwerc with us. David, thank you for being on our program.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Yeah, and what you're going to want to know about David is he is a master certified ADHD coach, and MCAC that's the master certified ADHD coach. So that's the acronym for it. And David is the co-founder of a professional association, the Professional Association of ADHD, or PAAC, PAC, which is the governing body responsible for establishing and monitoring the global standards for credentialing in ADHD coaching. So he's a big deal and has a big part in making sure that the quality of the ADHD coaching is at a very high level. He really sets the bar high for this. So David's been recognized by many of his peers for contributions in the field of ADHD coaching and research, and was inducted into the 2016 International CHAD Hall of Fame. CHAD is the Children and Adults with ADHD organizations, nonprofit, very popular, probably the biggest organization around ADHD, and has received the 2016 ACO Founders Award from the ADHD Coaches Association. It's also got a groundbreaking book that you're going to want to look up called Permission to Proceed: The Keys with Creating a Life of Passion, Purpose, and Possibility for Adults with ADHD. And in the book, he shares his unique and effective coaching models for gaining control of one's ADHD at home, at work, and in the community. So, David, you've been busy lately. So it's a pleasure to have you on the program. And, I think we're going to start with talking about what makes ADHD coaching so important for families. So let's talk about what coaching is first, so we can all get on the same page. What is coaching?
So, but before I do that, Bob, just one thing, because in my bio I may have neglected to give it to you. We're also president and founder of the ADD Coach Academy, which is the premier coach training program in the world for ADHD coaching in the family arena and in the life coaching arena. So I've been doing this for 20 some odd years. So not only am I a coach that coaches clients, but I train coaches. And so I just want everybody to know that, and I may have neglected to tell you. So what is ADHD coaching? As you alluded in your, thank you for that nice introduction, by the way. As you alluded, this is a profession. It's a profession with discipline and skills that fits into the team for comprehensive treatment and diagnosis of ADHD. So you've got your diagnostician, who's a psychologist or psychiatrist that identifies whether you have it. Then you've got your therapist that might deal with cognitive distortions or belief systems or reframing ADHD. And then you have an ADHD coach who is trained to partner with families or kids on an equal basis. So there's not a hierarchy. It's the coach and the client. And we are trained to do a bunch of different things. One is to empower our clients to understand their ADHD, because the psychiatrist doesn't have the time, the therapist doesn't have the time, the psychologist doesn't have the time to explain ADHD. And what we see is constantly people getting diagnosed with it, being treated with it, that don't understand how it manifests in their life. So the first thing we have to do is have a foundation in language that they'll understand, not using the esoteric, dopamine neurotransmitters and prefrontal cortex, talking about, you've got this machine that really works well, that in certain situations can't pay attention, is very impulsive, and we have to find those situations. So we help them understand where the ADHD manifests in terms of challenges, but what coaching really does, and what's important, is to get them into a mindset of what activates their brain. Because a lot of people with ADHD already have a mindset And, the way the brain works, you repeat something over and over again, you develop these neural pathways of negativity. So we're here to let them know that the diagnosis of ADHD does not mean they're broken. It means they have a unique brain wiring when understood where they can still reach success, where they can still be fulfilled. But in a world that mandates how you have to perform, not knowing your ADHD and having to do things the way everyone else does only exacerbates it. So we're here to help them navigate the world of ADHD and help them embrace the strengths that they already possess and learn how to manage their ADHD, not as a negative impediment or pathology, but as a source that can move them forward. And we have lots and lots of examples of that, and we've been successful at it.
Oh, that's fantastic. So what makes ADHD coaching so effective for families then with ADHD? Well,
so think about this, Bob. Let's guesstimate 4 to 6% of the world's population has ADHD. What we know is 85% are undiagnosed. It's huge. That represents a lot of people. And even when they are diagnosed, just what I was alluding to before, every family that I've ever met with and every child, when I ask them, tell me what you know about your ADHD, it's very, very, very minimal. They don't understand it. And if you don't have a foundation for understanding ADHD in the family and in the dynamics of the family, and if you don't understand the way your behavior is impacting your child, and in many cases, that somebody gave that kid that ADHD, it's usually a parent that's not been diagnosed. Mm-hmm. So we come into a great deal of ignorance and lack of education in a lot of families. So we have to bring them up to par with understanding, why are you taking the medications? What are these medications intended to do for you? Where does your ADHD show up? Where can we empower you to move forward? So the families don't understand. They've just kept these old patterns of behavior that just exacerbate the ADHD. One simple example is, why aren't you doing your homework? Why aren't you performing well? Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? That just tends to exacerbate the ADHD. When in coaching, what we do is we say, let's pause here for a moment. Let's educate the parent. Let's educate the kid. And we may do this separately. We may do it together, depending on the dynamics of the family. And we say, let's help you understand what ADHD is, a foundation. And they don't. And we say, so what if I told you ADHD was first and foremost a deficit of interest, a deficit of boredom, and what if I told you that this interest, if it's negative, can immobilize you, and if it's positive, can catalyze you, but you don't pause long enough to pay attention to the words that are coming out of your mouth. And words create worlds, and words create neurochemistry in the brain. So from the day one, we get so many families that are so negative, and there's a reason for that. Our brains are hardwired for negativity first. We are hardwired for a negativity bias. And parents are taught from their parents to scold, to punish as a means of motivation. Well, ADHD is also a challenge of motivation. So parents have to learn, not only do you have to understand your ADHD, but you have to understand how it manifests in activating the brain. So how do you activate the brain? You look at their strengths. You look at what's already working. You acknowledge those, and then you bring more of those strengths into their areas of weakness, not the other way around. And unfortunately, Bob, ADHD is very, very much paramount and focused on pathology. It's very much focused on weaknesses. We have worked on positivity, creating sources of positive emotion, because families have not learned the basic skill of emotional intelligence. They don't know how to identify their kids' emotions, let alone their ADHD. And emotions and ADHD go hand in hand. Even though it's not part of the criteria, they go hand in hand. So we teach them education. We teach them emotional intelligence. We teach them how to create a perception of acknowledgement for their kid. Mm-hmm. And we teach them how to activate the brain and how to change these patterns so that their child doesn't resent going home, that the home doesn't become an extension of school and pressure. And that's the last thing, is we find ways to help the parents take the pressure off the child, because boredom and pressure and negativity all result in exacerbating and impairing the ADHD, making it worse. All the medications in the world will not help a child with ADHD if those conditions are not changed. So that's what we do. We come in, we empower them, we educate them, we energize them to understand what's going to energize you as a parent, you as your family, and then we empower them to embrace that your child is not broken. He has strengths. Let's pay attention to them. Let's bring them into the fold, and let's help you understand that every word that comes out of your child's mouth and every word that you give them has the ability to either catalyze or immobilize their child.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, when I think of coaching, the first thing I think of, and I think a lot of people think this, is, you know, it's adult on adult, right? Adult coach, adult, you're training, you're teaching an adult. And in fact, we are. But we're teaching the parents here, what you're talking about is teaching the parents how to handle their children. I'm sure you also work with adults with ADHD, right? That don't have children. And
Yes.
and so when you're working with them, how does that look? You know, because you described, you know, how the parents will work with their children. How does it look like when the adult is the one with the ADHD and they're trying to work with a coach on that level?
Well, that's a great question. And I can even take that. We work with kids from age 10 and up. The key is that they have to be able to articulate and process what's on their mind. If not, we work with the parents. So when we work with, let's say, starting with adult, and by the way, the dynamics of the family have changed, Bob. Adult kids are living at home up into their 30s. So it's no longer that you're 18, you go off to college, and you're no longer part of the family. Children are in their 30s. So when we get a child, whether it's an adult or a teenager, the first thing we go in there is we ask them, what do you know about your ADHD?
Mm-hmm.
First question. And they know very little. And so we have to educate them a little bit, but we always do it from the perspective of, after I let you know a little bit more about your ADHD, I want you to tell me what you would hope that we can do together to improve the quality of your life.
Mm-hmm.
We always put it in their corner. So tell me, do you know what you're doing? What are you interested in? They tell me video games. A lot of parents get upset with that. But a lot of teenagers will tell me, I love video games, and I'll ask them why. And they'll tell me, I love the stimulation, I love the visual, I love the graphics. And they started telling me this. And I said, that's really interesting. How do you think, and by the way, that's all executive function, their ability to make quick decisions, their ability to be visual learners, that is all stuff that can be integrated into the school system, but nobody does that. So we let them know from day one, what are you interested in, what are your strengths, which plays to the opposite of ADHD, because ADHD manifests when you're bored and you're unengaged and you pay attention to your weaknesses and negativity. So we flip it and we say, so tell me, what are you interested in? What do you love to do? And at first they have to hesitate because they don't think that way. If I ask them what their strengths are, a very high percentage of kids and adults with ADHD don't know what their strengths are. They literally don't. So what we do is we go back and we start asking them questions. Tell me a time when you were really happy and you enjoyed what you were doing. They can always come up with that. For a young kid, you have to use the word fun. For an adult, you can use the word interest or inspiring. So you have to change the language and ask them. And what this does is it automatically shifts the paradigm from ADHD as a disorder to a unique brain wiring. Because what we're letting them know is you did all these things. We go back and we identify memories and experiences where they did have success, but they buried them. They're deeply buried. So in coaching, we're excavating them out. We're excavating them out through questions, through interest, through areas that activate the brain. And I've never had a client, when I asked them what's fun for you or what's interesting or what do you love to do, that wasn't able to answer me. And this becomes the beginning of shifting the neurology of their brain.
Right.
Because the brain is already stuck on negativity, inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity, cognitive and physical. So we're able to, and they're very articulate about it. So what this tells us, that when a person with ADHD focuses on experiences where they were fulfilled, joyful, successful, and had positive emotion with success, there is no executive function challenge. Their brain works perfectly fine. And Tom Brown, who's big on executive function, I showed him a few of our models and we've talked, and he says, David, when a person with ADHD is highly interested and has an intention or purpose for what they're doing, I don't see, very rare do I see functions in any domain, any challenges of executive function in any domain. So this is the paradox. If you keep them stuck in the pathology, yes, their ADHD will continue to grow and get worse.
And it'll look like executive functioning issues, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the paradox. So they go to school. What's the first thing they work on? Their area of weakness, their most boring subject. Right. Why not work on their best thing? And so this is where an ADHD coach also becomes very powerful for the family. They can go in with the family into the school district and become an advocate. But we also work with the child. And when we're working with the child, we have a confidential, even though the parents are paying for the child, we let that child know, this relationship is between you and I, even though your parents are paying for it. And I have an agreement with them that everything that we discuss, unless it's an emergency, unless it will impair your quality of life or dangerous, and I feel implored to tell them, then I will tell them. But things that you share with me that are not dangerous, that you want to share, they stay between us. And this builds up a very trustful and intimate relationship with the kids and the adults. And we know them. So we're right there from day one. We're helping them identify what's getting in the way of you reaching your progress. Where does your emotions show up? And are you able to identify those emotions? Because if they can't identify the emotions, they have no self-regulation. So we're improving their self-awareness right from the get-go.
You know, what's interesting to me is as I'm doing these interviews and I'm talking to other coaches and other coaching companies even, I've noticed that a lot of them, most of them, maybe all of them, focus on coaching executive functions. And it sounds like you go way beyond that. You go much deeper than that because you don't see it as an executive functioning issue. You see it as an interest issue, which I think, you know, a lot of our interviews have fallen like that. We talk about executive functioning issues, and then they talk about the fact that when they're interested, there's no stopping them. In fact, they're hyper-focused, right?
Yes. And yes. It's not a deficit disorder. It's an abundant disorder.
Right. Exactly. And one of the theme of the toolbox this run is that ADHD can be a superpower. It can be this genius part of you that we can let free, and maybe part of that process of getting to that brilliant part of ADHD is to shift how you see it and start to be able to access that through the process of getting the person with ADHD hyper involved in what they're really interested in. And it sounds like that's where you focus.
Well, it is, but there's a caveat there, because I can be, if we define interest as anything that stimulates the brain,
right.
Unfortunately, interest can be focused on negative thoughts, which turn into rumination, because negative thoughts are where our brain naturally goes. So people, without even realizing it, can be highly interested in negative thoughts, and that can turn into a ruminative episode where they can't shift out of it. So when we teach about interest, we have a model. The first thing we ask is your interest negative? The first question we always ask, is there a thought, emotion, or a belief that you have right now that is preventing you from being present with me right now? And a majority of time, there's some negative story or some negative emotion that they're highly interested in that we have to ask about and shift them into something that's of positive interest. So interest is the first piece, but interest isn't all of it, because kids with ADHD can be highly interested in video games and go 24/7. Unfortunately, can be interested in pornography and all kinds of things, drugs. And so what we do is we ask about the positive interest, but then the other piece is intention, purpose.
Right.
That we find that even a young child that has a purpose of helping somebody with a high interest does better than if they're just interested in something, because we in coaching have to find the source of motivation for using their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we look at exactly executive functions we consider a strength, not a deficit.
Mm-hmm.
We look at what are your executive function strengths, what are your processing modalities, how do you process information, how do you take it in. So for example, if I'm in a boring situation and I can't move around, I'll shut down. I'm a kinesthetic, visual, auditory learner. I have to see a picture, I have to hear it, and I have to move around. If you don't let me in that environment, I die. Nobody looks at that as strengths. But the most important thing, Bob, that we do that the rest of the world has not done is we look at character strengths, because the world is set up for performance. So every ADHD client I've ever had comes to me, I need to get this done. I need to get this done by a certain time. I need to do well so I can move on. But when I ask them, tell me, what are the essential ingredients that make you who you are? What motivates you to get out of bed? They can't think of it. They can't think of creativity or kindness or social intelligence or fairness is a huge one. So we've used an assessment that was created at the University of Pennsylvania by Martin Seligman, who's the father of positive psychology. And we were given permission, the only ADHD coach training program, to do research on finding out what are the character strengths of adults with ADHD. And we knew what the challenges would be: self-regulation, perseverance, all the executive function issues. Right. But what we also found out is when they paid attention to their signature strengths, their most important strengths, like creativity, social intelligence, judgment, whatever it was, judgment being analyzing, the moment they paid attention to their signature strengths, self-regulation, which was number 24, automatically went to number 1. Why? Because when you pay attention to your strengths that define who you are, you have to pause, you have to pay attention to them, you have to access them, you have to use executive function. So it becomes a strength. And anything in life that we achieve, you have to persevere. So their two lowest strengths, by virtue of accessing the ingredients that make them who they are, that's what we're really focusing on, Bob. A child has to know who they are before they know what they're going to do in high school and college. So we do that, and we do that with strengths, character strengths. And so this is very interesting because the research that we've done, and anecdotal, some of it's statistical, but the anecdotal stuff that I've done with over 50 clients consistently shows me that self-regulation and perseverance is 23 and 24 for me. Because these are the questions basically ask you, what makes you come alive? Well, self-regulation and perseverance doesn't make me come alive. What makes me come alive is creativity and kindness. So what happens is the moment a client focuses on those character strengths and brings in experiences with them, and I ask them, when was the last time you used these character strengths? They automatically are interested, engaged, and inspired to go in and access who they are, those character strengths, and they have to use self-regulation and they have to persevere. So their lowest strengths become their highest strengths. And this just leads to the paradox of ADHD. Why are we focused on pathology? Why are we focused on weakness? We've had tremendous success over the years doing just the opposite. Now, with that said, Bob, we don't negate those. We have a balanced approach. We let the person know if you go in these situations, your ADHD impairments will show up. If you go down these paths with using these tools, these strengths, these experiences, this is what will manifest. And so it's a matter of excavating the strengths, but it's really a vigilance, Bob, because people with ADHD, even when you tell them and you give them evidence, you're really good at this, they've had so many years of being beaten up and told that they couldn't do it, they don't believe you. So I have to become a warrior against negativity and constantly give them the proof. And I say, wait a minute, you've got a diary. You've got a success diary. You keep a success diary. Go into that success diary and pick any page in there. And they go to the success diary when I'm working with them, and they repeat the experience to me. And I said, did I make that up? Who actually experienced, and they realized that they've actually created this situation that they buried. And that's when the shift begins. The shift begins when they actually know in their gut that what we're telling them is true. What we're sharing with them, what we're asking them. And that's a huge difference.
It occurs to me that first of all, I think this is awesome because it really kind of flips the idea of coaching on its head, on what we've been thinking about and hearing about executive coaching. And now we're talking about it's a matter of interest. And you're so right. I mean, the interest is there. It reminds me of this movie I saw called The Current War. It had Thomas Edison was on it. It was a story about Thomas Edison and Westinghouse and the whole rollout of electricity and building electricity grids in the United States and beyond. And watching it, I'm thinking, that guy's got ADHD. Right? And he so did. And you can't go through those thousands of trial and errors without having some kind of ability to hyper focus. And so this is an interest where he's super interested. His wife was portrayed as somebody who was like, you go do that and I'm not going to bother you. And so she supported it. And so he was just in his element. He was able to just do one after the other trial and error experiment until he found what it was. And the neurotypical brain isn't set up for that, but the ADHD mind is. And that's how you get results. That's how he got results. So it's awesome that you guys are kind of spinning this on its head and really focusing in that area. And what's occurring to me as you were talking earlier is, what about the mom that says, every time I go into the grocery store, my kid has a meltdown because he doesn't get the cereal box that he wants or whatever. And so I can't take him anywhere without having this, this thing and this meltdown. And I know as an adult, being aware that this occurs, when I don't remember a time when I went in the store without seeing a kid in a meltdown, right? Because it's so common now. So how do you coach toward that? How do you coach parenting in those situations, those everyday situations that just, it's like, I can't even think about what you're talking about as far as, interest. It's like, I'm just dealing with the meltdowns and the behavioral issues and the jumping off the couch and the hyperactivity.
Yeah.
Where do you start with that?
So I've got to backtrack for 1 second because you peaked. My ADHD is taking me to Thomas Edison, and then I'll come back to this child.
Perfect.
So, because it was a perfect example. So Thomas Edison, most doubtedly, but I'll never forget. He had an interview with, General Electric is located in Schenectady, not far from where I grew up in Albany. And when he was inventing what they called the light filament, one of the guys from the newspaper, the Albany Times Union, whatever it was, asked him, Mr. Edison, don't you consider yourself a failure? You've had 1,000 experiments with this light filament and you still haven't invented it. And what Edison replied was, no, I don't consider myself a failure. I just found 1,000 ways I won't do it the same way again. And I just love that attitude. It's, nothing in life comes out without experimentation and exploration. And to get to one's vision of what they want, you have to have a lot of revisions along the way. And, that's the kind of language we use. So I just wanted to share that because that was such a great example. And we use Edison in the training, as a matter of fact. I always refer to him. So now back to this child in the store. Isn't it amazing 2 people with ADHD can carry on such a scintillating conversation and stay on track? Isn't it great?
I'm interested.
so the situation with the mother and the child, it never ceases to amaze me how parents don't choose their battles really well. If you know a child is stimulated by something, why would you rip it out of their hands? Why would you take it away from them? Let the child have the box of cereal, let them play with it, and you go around and get all your shopping done. But what the parent does is has a belief system that I've got to teach my kid what's right, when that child is biologically connected to that cereal box and automatically is going to biologically react to the mother taking it away. So when we explain to the mom and the dad what you're doing, your child can't help it. When you grab something out of his hand that he's engaged, you're asking him to transition out of hyper-focus, something he's super interested. You're taking it away from with no rhyme or reason just because you think that's what's right for him. And then I asked them, what do you gain from taking that cereal box away from your child? Tell me what the consequences are. And they sit there dumbfounded, and what they realize is they make their shopping experience miserable when all they have to do is allow that child to have the box. Now, if the mother wants to say, Johnny, sure, play with the box, but when we're done with the end of the box, we're not going to buy that box because we don't need it, fine. But play with the box because, honey, I know you love that.
Okay.
That creates partnership, that creates connection, and it says to the child, you understand me. So from a young age, what you just described happens so often because the parent has a belief system, I need to discipline my kid. They have a story in their head without the understanding of the biological connection of ADHD and the interest, the hyper-focus.
Sure.
So let them have it, but talk to them about it and say, okay, if that's real interest to you, I'd love for you to have it, but just understand at the end, we're going to take it away. He can transition for the 30 minutes the mom's in. And this happens, you just explained a scenario that happens every day, literally.
Every day. Yeah. Every day, all the time in almost every grocery store.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I wanted our viewers to hear from you that you coach into every situation, even though you're coaching in this different way that they may have heard of, coaching into the interest of the child. How do you coach into that? And you made that connection. That's awesome. And I'm glad our viewers got a chance to listen to that. Before we end here, I'd like to ask two more questions
Sure.
that I think are important. One of them is why is it important to hire a well-trained ADHD coach? Because I know there's lots of coaches out there. Some of them are trained by different organizations. You guys seem to train your coaches a little differently. Why is it important to hire a coach that's been trained by your company?
Well, that's a great question. And the first response I would say is there's a proliferation of ADHD coaching skills that create a philosophy that have not been monitored by anyone. On the other hand, we have gone through an accrediting organization which has vetted out our materials, our content, not only from the ADHD side, but from the life coaching side.
Okay.
So we're accredited by both. And the reason that we did that, we were very successful before that, but the reason that we did that is I wanted somebody getting a certification from us that stood out with the highest standards, that an independent, objective, professional organization that has expertise in not only coaching, but the subject matter can say, this coaching material, these skill sets are what's right for the clientele that you're going to be working for, and we endorse it. And it's a long process, and it's a hard process, but I can honestly say that I know, and being the largest in the world, is relative because, we can put out 100 coaches a year. That's a lot. These big schools can put out thousands, but I won't do more than 100. And we have 10 instructors, and they're all trained, and they've gone through extensive training. I won't put any more than that because they have to demonstrate their skills. So when they come from our school, not only are they well trained, but they have a certification from an accredited school, that that they have the skills, the understanding, and the knowledge and the experience, because they have to have 100 hours minimum of coaching clients to get that certification. So, they're not just coming raw. And at the advanced level, it's over double that. Plus, they have to get mentor coaching. So there's all these, it's a real discipline. It's a real profession. Years ago, it was looked at this airy-fairy thing when it was coming out, but it's not. It's, when Ned Hollowell, I was just interviewed by Ned, he had me on his show. Ned was the guy that came up with the concept. And Ned was the first one to say, wow, this is way different than what I thought it was going to be. It is a profession. It is a discipline. And what we do, no one else in the world can do. So I encourage you, we're not the only accredited school. There's a couple of others, but that's the way to do it. And the other thing is we're the world's largest for a reason, because we've proved ourselves over and over again. And we do research. And we have students from over 50 countries training because it's done virtually. So you don't have to go to a school, just like we're doing this interview. It's done virtually with great success. And the other thing is, I know a well-trained coach, the top coaches in the world from the academy have gone through our advanced training. That means twice the amount. We have good basic coaches, but eventually they go on into the family program that we have, family coach training, or the advanced. But what we find is the best coaches are going through all three, because they start off at basic. They realize, well, everything's related to the family. If I coach an entrepreneur with ADHD, that entrepreneur has a child with ADHD. He passed it on. They don't know how to deal with the family. They don't know how to deal with their business. They don't understand their ADHD. It's like a domino effect. So then they go take the advanced skills to make their skills even deeper. How to deal with emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, how to get to the who of the client, not the what. These are deep skills. So they become very good at the basic level. A family can hire a coach at the basic level, do very well.
Right.
But a good basic coach is going to say, I need to refer you to an advanced coach, because coaches are not in competition with each other. They share, we connect, because there's not enough coaches to go around. There never will be. We'll never meet the demand because there's going to be way more people. And so when you hire a well-trained coach, you're going to pay more, but you're going to get more. And also, I would say this, lots of families don't know what they're seeking from a coach. So a well-trained coach has been through all these scenarios that we bring them through, because they're coming to coaching not knowing, what do I want to be coached around? And a well-trained coach knows how to take that, also knows how to work with a kid that says, I don't want to coach. I don't want to do coaching. They have a way where we train them to empower that kid to look at the coaching as something that they want to do, not something that they have to do because the parents are putting pressure on them. So that's what a well-trained coach is. They have the mindset of a life coach with an ADHD lens. We put those two together and we integrate it from day one. And that's what a well-trained coach will do. You can't find that everywhere.
Brilliant. That's awesome. And it sounds like if you become a coach, and what I know is that a lot of people with ADHD coaching go on to become an ADHD coach. And so if you have ADHD, if you're viewing this and you want to become a coach, you certainly can. David's contact information is below, and you can go to the website. You can start to research that and join the Coaching Association. If you're looking for a coach, how do they find a coach? Can they go through your website as well?
Yes. Well, we have a Find a Coach page, and you can go there. And I would suggest that you call our administrative assistant, Stacy. Let them know what you're looking for, because she knows and we know. And we're going to try to get you 3 people to interview. You don't just take the first coach. Our belief is you interview 3 coaches, because they're all going to be knowledgeable, but it's the connection that's very important. How do you feel this coach connects with the family, with your child? And sometimes they hire a coach for the family and one for the child. It's very different, because some coaches just work with parents and some coaches work with both parents and kids, or just kids. But they'll tell you that on our site. They'll tell you that. So there's that. There's also ACO, the ADHD Coaching Organization. They have, and they put the certified coach. Look for a certification from an accredited school, though, when you're looking. And if you don't know, ask. And then for the life coaching, the International Coach Federation, they do have an ADHD section. But I would say come to the academy first, go to ACO second, and then there's ADA. ADD.org. They have a coaching section as well.
And if they're looking for you, they go to addca.com, and that's where they can find a coach page. That's where they can find information on how to become a coach. And, all your information. That link, by the way, is below. So if anybody's interested, they can click there. The phone number is also there. And the free gift that you're giving today is also there at the bottom. So you can click on that and get all that information.
Bob, I would say one last thing. This is a big decision for people. And, we don't, we fill our classes. So we're not there to pressure anybody, but we want to make sure that they make the right decision. So anybody who's interested in finding out about the more training, they'll talk directly with me. That's how seriously I take this.
That's awesome.
Every student that comes through, unless they sign up without talking to me, they talk to me and I bring them through the program. I tell them what's right for them, how they can do it, all the philosophies. And also on our site, there's a free recording. It's called the free intro recording. You can just sign up for that. That gives you our philosophy and an overview of the entire program and what makes us so different from everybody else. And then lastly, I wrote a book. It's older now, but it's called Permission to Proceed. And it's written for adults, but it really applies to the family. And in that book are many of the concepts I've described today in layman's language. And I wrote the book in this way. You can go to any chapter in the book that interests you. I don't just talk my philosophy, I live my philosophy. Okay? And that's right on the site. It's called Permission to Proceed or Amazon. And if you're interested, I say that'll give you a good grounding, the free recording and/or talk to me. So we give you a lot of pathways to get there.
That's fantastic. So if you're interested in ADHD coaching, this is a great place to start. And, ADHD coaching, what I'm finding as I'm interviewing all these top experts, it's another piece, another strategy that you can use. Certainly, it's a very important one. You can go a lot of different directions and solutions and finding out. The ADHD coaching sounds like it gives you almost everything you need, from learning about ADHD and understanding the problem to also getting some support and some guidance so you're not alone. And that's not just for the person with ADHD, but it's for the family as well. So this is fantastic stuff. Thank you, David, so much for coming on our program and talking to us about ADHD and ADHD coaching and how it can be such a game changer in your home environment and creating the family that you've always dreamed of.
Well, thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share what I love to do. And thank you for being such a great interviewer and interjecting and expanding upon the concepts that I don't always get that. So I appreciate that.
No problem. That's my pleasure. And thank you all for watching this episode of the ADHD Toolbox. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, David.
Thank you.